Well, welcome, Shelley. Happy, beautiful Sunday morning. I don't know what weather's like in
Yeah.
Boston, but it's nice here in Minneapolis. We're savoring this.
It's like a beautiful fall morning, or it's been beautiful fall
It
days.
it feels like almost summer here, which is kind of unheard of, anyways.
It's
But
crazy.
welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
And first, could you share a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally, so that our listeners can know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, for sure. So I currently am working for Boston Beer Company. Going back a bit, I got my degree in chemical engineering from Iowa State University. I had an interesting path there. I actually started in animal science, was going to go to vet school, and
I did
then
not know this.
yes, and then last minute, I was a few months from graduating. I was like, this is not the right path. I need to pivot. And so I switched to chemical engineering. It was quite an endeavor. It was, 2 years of just all chemie classes. So that was a lot, but we made it through. And I'm so happy that I made that switch because I'm very happy with where my career has gone since then. So yeah, I actually at the engineering career fair learned that I could make beer for a living. And I was like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. In. So yeah, started in the beer industry right out of college, and was there for 7 years, and then left the beer industry for a few years, and then realized that was a grave mistake and came back. And so now I've been with Boston Beer for the last 12 years. It's been great managing product development, R&D, and some lab operation sites. And yeah, personally, I love to be active. I love to run. I recently ran all of the world major marathons
Congrats.
pre-Sydney. Thank you. Thank you. Now
Wow.
they've added Sydney,
Congratulations.
so I'm like, oh no, I might have to unretire from the marathon. But yeah, I love to stay active, do, biking and a lot of charity bike rides and berries. And then, yeah, recently changed my world a little bit by getting a puppy. So I have an 8-month-old
Well, I
golden
have a puppy,
retriever.
Shelley.
Oh
Welcome.
man, we could share stories. I've learned so much.
Actually, I thought, and maybe my perspective is a little skewed. I thought children are much harder. At least the puppy's just happy all the time to see me and love me. Like once you get past the house, like house training.
Yes, yes.
But the house train, that first, because I've never had an animal, that first week, I was like, there was just pee and poop everywhere, and I was just like chasing.
You're like, oh man, what am I
My
doing?
friends were like, "You need a cage, or so you can't just like let her run around." I was like, "I didn't know." I was like,
Oh
"They're like,
man.
you gotta have like an area." I was like, "Oh," but now we're at 10 months, and we just moved, so now I realize we got to start the training like all over again.
Oh
So
yes.
that, but it's still like yeah, it is a whole I feel like I have another child just managing her Issa's schedule. Does she have doggy daycare and if we travel? So yes, we can exchange all the stories. But I will say this, I'm a full like dog mom now,
You're
which I
full in
never
now.
full
Yeah,
in.
same,
Like
same.
full
I
in.
love it. Yeah, she's great.
So that's amazing. So yeah, you that will keep you busy. So for sure.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, Shelley, so you talked about okay, you knew like, hey, animal science is not my jam. When did you realize like this moment? Did you have a moment where you're like, supply chain is where I need to be? And can you share that story?
Yeah, I think honestly, at a broader perspective, I think even just working in production and being part of a process that has a tangible product is something that I learned is really important. And I would say honestly, that moment probably came when I left the beer industry and I went to work in I worked in a completely different industry. I was managing Six Sigma projects for a research company. It was very different work and it was a great experience. But through that, I learned I really missed having a tangible physical product that I work on that I can see the results of the work that I'm
Mm.
doing. It's something that I can share with my friends and family. And so that was really a great learning experience from that huge career pivot of, oh wait, this is actually really important to me and I need to go back to
Mhm.
that. And so understanding that that was a big piece of it. And I think too, just like working in a brewery is a great environment to work in. Like it's obviously a little different from working in a corporate office, but I really enjoy it. Like I just like being around, all of the equipment and just like helping to problem solve and the challenges that come up from being in a production environment. And so I think for me, like that really is where I realized that I want to be and continue to keep my career in that segment.
So, fun fact, this is where Shelley and I crossed paths over 20
Yes.
years ago. We both worked in the same brewery. So she
Oh,
was
I
a
love
quality
that.
engineer and I was like the team leader. So yes, on shifts, off shifts, spending a lot of time in our early 20s in the city of St. Louis. But there is something about that. Yeah, when you get to be around the things that you're making and then see it on the shelf. And I love how you said that you get to share things with your family and friends and be like, I had a helping hand in that.
I think it's funny that
Yes.
you and I both started off in liquor and beer, so I
Yeah,
don't know how
I
that
know.
worked out. Okay, Shelly, you're out in Boston and somebody's like, "What do you do for a living?" How do you describe it to everybody else?
Yes, great question. I think the easiest way to describe what I do is I manage R&D. So basically, what that means is creating new beers, both for the Sam Adams and Dogfish Head brands. So any new beer that we're going to put out on a national scale, working through the entire process of making that happen. And then the R&D side is really trial work. So it could be, if we're looking at bringing in a new ingredient, or if we're going to make a hop change, or if we're going to, trial a different type of ingredient. So if we're looking at like lemon, do we want lemon peel, lemon puree? What are the different impacts of those? How do they show up from a sensory perspective in the profile? And so really thinking about like how do we want to set up a test to evaluate that. And so we have a small research brewery at the Sam Adams Brewery, which is where we do all of our development, that we can do smaller scale trials before we go scaling up to do some initial benchtop work. Um, and then kind of the third bucket is the lab operations site. And so that team manages all of our Beyond Beer portfolio. So helping with blending for any testing that we're doing, or whether that's external or internal, any testing that we want to do. Again, if we're looking at making a change to a process, that team would support any of that work. So it's kind of fun too, because I feel like I have my hands in a lot of different kind of
Yeah.
areas, both from the beer and Beyond Beer side, and then also just from a cross-functional perspective of working with a lot of teams across the company to help bring those beers to market.
Okay, so could you talk a little about this? Because you are in R&D, you're in operations, you're in innovation, the labs. Can you walk us through like what is the journey of a new beer? Like how does that come about? Who comes up with these ideas? And then how do you and your teams like bring it to life so that somebody is like out at a bar and is getting pulled at a tap?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, the ideas come from a lot of different places. We have an incredibly talented brewing team that's really fun, creative, innovative. They love to try new things. So sometimes they'll just have a wild, wacky idea of like, hey, I really want to try this beer, or really try this combination of flavors and see how it hits. Sometimes it's seeing an opportunity in the market, either from, they just changed it. It's no longer Nielsen, but the incoming data on, Circana data. That's, what's trending in the market. Our sales force is out in the market, the same thing. They might see something that's popping and be something like, hey, we should probably look at this. Or, the brand team kind of identifying, hey, there's an opportunity to develop a new beer within the space. So really all of those ideas kind of are where new projects can start. And then once we actually decide we're going to move forward with a project, we typically start by creating our DOE. And really, what we're trying to do there is lay out all of the variables that we want to test in a beer, with as few iterations as possible. So obviously, we're trying to manage capacity and make the
Mhm.
most value out of each brew that we're doing in our R&D brewery. And so we'll lay all that out of like, taking a single brew. We have capability to split a single brew into multiple smaller tanks, so we can look at, maybe different levels of an ingredient, or maybe, five different spices, and then we can do benchtop work to kind of blend those together and figure out like what combination works really well. Um, and then there's also the testing side of things. So we have consumer insights that can test a concept even before we start brewing. And then we also have, once we have a beer developed, we have various methods that we can do to get consumer feedback on, is this hitting? Is this right? Is this meeting expectations? And the tap rooms are a really great opportunity to utilize or to get that feedback. We have a program we call Drink Lab, where we can give consumers a beer and they can fill out a survey and basically say like, I like this, I don't like this, I could see myself having a few, or this is the occasion when I might have this.
Mm.
And
It
so
open
that's a
to
great
all? Is
tool.
that just in the Boston
Yes,
area?
totally. Yes. And having tap rooms across the country also helps with that. Like we can test things in different regions, and kind of see like what's resonating in one area that might not be in another. Um, And then, yeah, and then we do roundtable tastings. And so basically, we kind of iterate through that process. So we'll brew, we'll taste, get consumer feedback, tweak, and then go back, make changes, and brew. So we typically try to do several iterations before we're actually at the point of finalizing a profile and launching. But yeah, it's a great fun process, and again, really collaborative. There's a lot of teams that touch any product that comes out to market. We have our legal team that's making sure we're legal. And filing those TTB formulas and making sure the labels are accurate and all of that. Our procurement team is obviously a huge piece of this, of making sure we can get these ingredients. Our commercialization team that's helping to make sure like everyone's marching towards the same kind of end date and hitting our key milestones. Finance team want to make sure we're profitable in what we're developing. So there's definitely a lot of cross-functional work too that we're kind of coordinating with as these projects are going through to make sure that it's successful when we launch. So
That's so interesting.
It
And so,
is.
Shelley, what would be a surprising supply chain challenge that you face for people outside of brewing wouldn't expect that you have?
yes. I think a couple things come to mind. I think one, just kind of a funny thing is like yeast health can dictate our packaging schedule, which just seems kind of crazy. Like,
Hmm.
what? One little thing that's like so far upstream. But I think, speaking more broadly, I think just the level of complexity. When we think about, so we develop a beer, we have 3 different production breweries that we could go to. They all have completely different capabilities. So they all were built at different times by different companies. They have different, brewing systems. They have different packaging capabilities. They're in different parts of the country. And so we're kind of managing like, they're all different sizes. And so what's the volume of this product going to be? What's the package that we want it in? What's the primary market that it's going to go to? And what are the capabilities of that brewery? And so we try to factor that in at the very first step of development to make sure we're thinking about those pieces of, is this going to be a product that we can actually make at the brewery that we intend to make it at? And what I mean by that is, something like, we'll take an ingredient like lemon puree again. So if we are brewing a beer in Boston, we have a 10-barrel brew house system. It might be a bucket or a pail of lemon puree, no big deal. And then we go to like a Cincinnati brewery, which is 150, 200 barrels. And so then maybe we're talking a couple of drums. And then if we went to Pennsylvania, which is a 650 barrel system, then we're looking at, now we're talking about 10 totes. Like, is that something their production team is even capable of? Do they have the equipment needed to add that much? And so those are the kind of things that we have to think about very early in the process to make sure we're developing a beer that can actually be produced in our production locations. And then the other piece is like the packaging side of things. We do different can sizes, sometimes bottles, sometimes kegs. And so thinking about, where are we going to produce this, and are they going to be able to do it in that size can or in that package configuration? And so all of those, there's just a thousand interrelated sort of decisions that have to be made. And then our team is responsible for figuring out like how do we navigate all of those challenges and get to a product that's going to meet the needs of what we're trying to put in market.
So in that example, Shelley, like how long between idea to it ends up on, the shelf? How long does that take on average? Like for the
Um,
like a lemon.
yeah, great question. It varies wildly. Our ideal is 1 year in terms of like, starting development and then actually like having it in market. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes like last minute opportunities pop up and we're like, okay, we're going to figure this out. Like everyone's running towards it. And Jim Cook is very much a let's not miss the opportunity. We'll figure out how to do it. Like, let's get scrappy. Let's get creative. Like, how can we parallel path a bunch of things so that we can actually hit this opportunity and, not miss it. And so that's our ideal, but I will say that's not always what happens.
We know. Yeah.
We know.
You can relate.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Shelley, on top of being like a world marathoner, you are also, this is so cool, I think, one of only 28 Master Cicerones. Am I saying that right? Cicerone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. I
Yes.
want to say like Cicerone, but I'm not going
I know.
to.
Cicerone.
Cicerone. Okay, but seriously, you're one of only
Mhm.
28 Master Cicerones in the world. So first of all, a huge
Wow.
congratulations
That
because
is
that is a
amazing.
huge
I don't know
Thank
what it
you.
milestone.
is. I was like, that sounds amazing.
Okay. So before we go on to our next few questions, could you share a little bit about like what is a Master Cicerone and like what was that journey to become one?
Yes, definitely. So I think the easiest way to describe it, it's very similar to a wine sommelier. And so it's basically a certification process that looks at many different aspects of beer. And so the program has four different levels, with master being the highest and final level. And really, there's kind of five buckets of knowledge that they have organized this exam around. And so there's keeping and serving beer, which is basically understanding draft systems, how to properly pour a beer, how to properly serve a beer, different glassware, things like that. Uh, there's the beer styles, which there's something north of 95 different beer styles that are part of the exam. That's all through the BJCP, which is the Beer Judge Certification Program guidelines. And so understanding, all of the specs, sources of origin from different countries, commercial examples from multiple countries, the profile, the history of the style. There's, all kinds of pieces with that. There's beer flavor and evaluation. So understanding like how do you evaluate a beer? What are the flavor compounds that you can find in a beer? What are the sources of those compounds? There's beer ingredients and brewing process, which is pretty straightforward, like understanding any ingredient that could go into beer, and then understanding fermentation science, how brewing equipment works, what each piece of equipment does. And then the final is pairing beer with food. So once you get to that master level, the level of knowledge and detail that you need in each of those five kind of main topic areas is incredibly in depth. And so the exam itself is 2 days. It's about 9 hours each day.
My gosh.
And it consists of 3 hours of essay writing, six oral exams, and then four tasting panels. And then you get to do it all again the second day. So it's very intense.
Okay, but once you have it, you're done, right? Like, you
I'm
don't have to.
done.
Okay,
Yes.
you don't have to like recertify.
Oh,
Do you get
no.
is it like a license you can carry around your wallet? Is there a medal?
I
What do you get
Yeah,
when you earn this?
I get a badge, a little like pin.
I mean,
I've
I
got a
wear that all the
badge. We have
time.
like jackets for
Yeah,
Boston
I mean,
Beer.
you deserve it.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it was a very long journey. I mean, realistically, it took me years to get to that level
My gosh.
of studying and a lot of sacrifices and really focusing on getting there. But yeah, I'm very proud to be one of the Master Cicerones and also to be very happy to be done studying.
So, Shelley, so you talked about the process. What was the most challenging part of the journey? And then what did you learn about yourself through that?
That's a good question. I think the most challenging part was really staying motivated for that long. It was a lot of sacrifices of like weekends and my evenings and time away from friends and really focusing on just like studying. And so I think a few things that I learned about myself, like one, I had to have many whys of why I was doing this, so that when I, had those
Mm.
moments of being like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, I would rather go out on this beautiful Saturday and hang out, like versus like sitting here reading a book about, mashing. But I think just going back to that list of whys when I did have those moments, and I think the other piece I learned about myself, I am not someone who likes to ask for help. It's very against my nature. And this was just a journey that absolutely required it. I had to have help from other people, especially my coworkers. My coworkers were awesome in terms of helping me study. And like that could be anything from, messing up draft systems that then I had to fix to like giving me off flavors to evaluate to like unknown beers. Just sending me random essay questions to try to answer or like popping me in the hallway and be like, all right, here's a question for you, and just kind of put me on the spot. Like it was so helpful, and I'm very grateful to all of them for their support, because I realized it was not something I could do on my own. And so having that support and kind of building that network of people that could help you and also help me keep accountable and make sure that I was doing what I needed to do, was a really important part of that journey.
Love how you set up that network around you and ask because I do. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes we just want to put our heads down and do it. And I think when you raise your hand and ask, so many people do want to support you and see you succeed. But it's us taking that first step and asking for help. Yeah.
The other thing I
Absolutely.
was thinking about, I was in a conversation where letting people help us is like the people that enjoy that. Like when you don't
Yes.
ask for help, you're like not letting them have that joy of helping. So
Hmm.
that keeps me, because I'm not a ask for help. Like it's really hard for me to, until like it's okay. Like this week where you're just when your life is overwhelmed, you're like I need help. But like, but it is like denying that other person of like the joy to help. You know. So I do think it's
That's
like it's
so
definitely
true.
a two-way street, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes where we feel like it's always a burden to ask when there are people that really do enjoy it, and we enjoy helping others as well. So
Yeah.
just
So
something to think about.
true. It makes me think too, like there were a few times, when I would go out and meet friends and I'd still try to like bring studying in some way. And so I'd be like, okay, before I get there, like order me a beer. Don't tell me what it is. I'm not going to look at the menu. Like, and they had fun with it. They were like, oh, what can I give her that like she might not, might challenge her. So you're right. Like I think, asking for that help, a lot of people are excited and want to contribute.
That's really fun. I love that. I would be the friend that would order you all kinds of random beers.
Mhm.
Yeah, they, and I think all my friends learned a lot about beer in this process too. So
See,
it's
I
great.
bet they are. They're dropping some knowledge when they're out and
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of talking a little bit more now about beer innovation.
Yes.
It feels like there's all kinds of different things you can see while you're out there, uh, whether you're at the grocery store or you're actually out in like a bar or a pub. What are some of the flavors that like you're seeing that you think are some really cool trends that are happening? Maybe it's not even flavors; it could just be something about the profile. And then also, you talked a little bit about this, but how do you balance the pressure of like we need to innovate, we need to innovate, we need to innovate, and we have all of this operational efficiency and consistency that we also have to hit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really interesting right now. The biggest trend that I'm seeing in beer is this huge bifurcation of extremes. So like there's
Mhm.
9% high alcohol beers in 19.2 ounce cans that are doing great. Like huge bombs of, flavor and just crazy. And then the other extreme that's really growing is non-alc. So it like couldn't be more
That is
differentiated from that,
fascinating.
Mhm.
which is so interesting. And the not-alc space has been really, really interesting to watch. I think it's expanded beyond just beer. You definitely can find like non-alc spirits, you can find non-alc wine.
Mhm.
Like it's a trend that we're seeing across all of alcohol, or non-alcohol. It's kind of a weird space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, and I think the expectation of what people have for non-alc beers is changing. Like, it's not like in the old days where it was very devoid of flavor. There was one option you could find. Now you can find different styles of NA beers, and the expectation is that they taste very similar to a full, version beer,
So I have a
which is
funny
a
story
challenge.
on
Yeah.
that. So my grandfather who passed, he drank a lot of beer, loved beer, and then we got like to a certain age, his doctor was like, "You have to cut back," and it was called like near beer, and he hated it. I mean, he was like, "I'd rather just drink water." Like,
It's like,
but,
what is this?
and it was like, and I think it was called near beer. I don't know. I just remember I would go visit him and at lunch when I was living in Kentucky and I was working for a liquor company and I would come over and have lunch with him and he'd have his like near beer there and he'd just be so disgusted. And I'm like, Granddad, now
Oh,
they have like
grandpa.
real
I
beer that
know.
you could have had. Yeah. So it is.
Yeah.
I do think it's evolved at least. I never forget that story because I was just like, what? He's like, yeah, it's like, there's barely any alcohol. It tastes terrible. I was like, well, then why are you drinking it? He's like, it's all I can have.
It's like it's this or nothing. So
This is or nothing. Yeah. So
yeah.
that is so interesting. I have seen like the generational differences with
Yeah, that feels like a
drinking.
driver.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
people are really yeah, changing that behavior. And I've even had some pretty good wine that some non-alcoholic wine and stuff that's pretty good too. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I think across all three like kind of buckets, the level of product you can get now is much higher than what it was 5 years ago for sure. Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk about this 26.2 brew. And how did your personal passion for marathon running intersect with professional to create this beer? And like take us kind of behind the scenes on the development. And yeah, I just this is so interesting.
Yeah, so this was a really fun passion project for me. As I mentioned, I do love to run. I love to run marathons. And for me, I just felt like the options when you finish a marathon were not great. Like you can find a low alcohol beer, but a lot of them didn't have a ton of flavor. And so I really had a passion for developing a beer that was going to kind of hit on that mark of like having flavor, but also realizing that, you did just exude a lot of effort in terms of running. So kind of finding that balance. And I think, I feel lucky that Boston Beer was so supportive, being like, yeah, we see opportunity, like run with it. Let's go see what we can do with it. Run with it. Didn't even
I
intend that.
was
I
like,
love
"Ooh, good
that.
pun.
I was
Way
like,
to go."
bada
I was like,
boom.
that was unintentional.
I was like, yes.
Oh man. So yeah, and I think one of the core values for Boston Beer is we innovate and collaborate because the status quo sucks. And this definitely hit on that mark of being like, okay, let's go with it. Let's see what we can do. And it was so fun to kind of get input from other runners across the company of, what would you want to see? What would you like? How would, this hit? And then being able to bring that to one of the biggest events in Boston. The Boston Marathon is a huge event. Like, I think something like 1 million people come out to support the
Mhm.
runners. It's a full weekend, like the whole city comes together. It's one of my favorite weekends
It
in
is. It's like a
Boston.
city holiday
Oh,
there.
it's
Yes,
awesome.
for
Yeah, I mean, it
sure.
actually is. Like Monday is
Is.
Patriots Day. The
Yep,
marathon's on
yep.
a Monday, which is kind of unusual. Like, most marathons are on Sundays. And so to be able to like, create this beer, be the official beer of the Boston Marathon, be working with the Boston Athletic
Well, that's
Association,
so
which is
awesome.
like a
Mhm.
historic, organization. It was so cool, like so fun to bring all that together. And we still bring that beer back every year for the marathon, and I hope it's a tradition we keep forever because I just, I love it. So great,
So cool. Okay, so
so
Shelley,
fun.
we're gonna switch a little bit to some kind of leadership questions. So, um, in s- you're in the beer industry. Have a long history there too. I think sometimes we assume that it's very male dominated. At least it can be seen that way. I think a lot of places in supply chain can still be felt or seen that way. What's been your experience in this field? And then how have you navigated or maybe challenged some of the industry norms?
Yes, I think that's totally a fair question. I will say it's challenging sometimes being a woman in this very male dominated industry, but I think we're in a much better place than we were when I started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I first started, and Katie, you probably feel the same way. Like it was frequent that I would be the only woman in the room. I'd be the only one in the production floor. I'd be the only one in the meeting that was a woman. And like, it could be intimidating, especially like in that environment. And I think, it, especially being right out of college, like, I'm young, I'm brand new in my career. Like there's a
Mm,
lot, the learning curve is steep regardless. But I think I was really lucky to have some great mentors, both men and women, that think helped me, figure out how to navigate that. And I think the other piece that I learned early on was really to advocate for myself and to be willing to step up and say, hey, I'd love to lead that project. Hey, I want to be involved in this. I want to take ownership of this. I would love that training opportunity. Can I go to this class? I want more experience in this. Can I go shadow that team? And I think doing that and just, speaking up and saying like, hey, I want these opportunities, I think was hugely important because not necessarily going to be just offered them. And I think it would have been
yeah.
very easy to be passed over for some of those opportunities.
Mm,
And
mhm.
so I think just being willing to like raise your hand and say like, hey, I want in on this. I'm capable of doing it. I can do it. I can figure it out. I think was really, really a great learning curve for me of like, yes, that's what you have to do. And I will say too, Boston Beer is very supportive. Like I feel really good. We have a women's networking group that's very active. We have women in leadership positions. And I think in general, it's just a very different sort of culture and environment than, what the industry was probably 20 years ago. So it's great to see us making progress.
We're making progress. I still remember going to the Great American Beer Festival like out in Denver, and they
hmm
give you like a gift to feel like you're there. And the gift was a beard trimmer.
Duh.
I'm not even kidding you.
I already knew where you were
I gave it to
going.
my dad. Actually, I didn't give it to my dad. I gave it to David because my dad,
I
military
knew
guy,
you were
never
going
has a
with
beard.
this. I knew you
But
were
yeah,
going. I
I
was
was
like, I
just
know where
like,
this is
that
going.
was the gift, was the beard trimmer. I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'll save this
That
for
So I
is
can
someone
see
else.
something else.
It's so funny. It was so
that
funny. And
is
they also didn't assume that you were there to talk about beer too. Like that was the other part. They
yes.
Oh,
um
interesting.
I was asked so many times if I'm on the marketing team, and I was
Yes.
like, "No,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
work in brewing
Yeah.
on the
They
floor.
assume,
I make
yes,
beer."
I make beer. Like, I can tell you all about, like, hop varieties, the
That's
different
when
malt,
you
like,
should have
all the
brought your
things, but
jacket out, Shelley, and be like,
pop that
And be like,
pin.
"Actually."
"Actually."
I could tell you a few things.
Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is why I can't get any kind of certification. I'd be like, "Damn." Like, "What's that you say?"
Courtney's like the
Alright,
ultimate hype girl. It's the
I
best.
am.
I love it. I love it.
So, Shelley, you've been involved in mentoring emerging food and beverage entrepreneurs through the program Brewing the American Dream. What's one piece of advice that you find yourself giving most often to those starting out in their own ventures?
Yes, I will say this program is so great. It's really cool to help mentor, entrepreneurs that are, starting out, like following their dream, going after it, and just the level of passion and excitement and being able to help support that is so great. I love this program. I love being involved. I think, one of the biggest I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. And one is one that I learned from Jim Cook. It's always been his mentality. And I think I mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's get scrappy. Like, you don't have to have the super fancy equipment to test something. You don't have to, how can you get 80% of the way there? Like, can you do something on the bench that's going to give you an indication of if a flavor profile is going to work? Or like, can you do some rapid prototyping to kind of just like look at a bunch of things really quickly and be like, okay, that's not going to work. This has promise. Let's definitely go this direction. And so I think just getting really creative and just trying a lot of different things is, the way to go. I think the other piece is keeping your scope small. So don't
Mhm.
scale too quickly. You don't need 27 products when you launch. Like, what do you do really well and focus on that and do really well, get everything, nailed down, build your customer base, but don't expand it, 15 states because then you're going to have more complexity. You're going to have to manage operations are going to become more complex. Like you're diluting your value. And so I think keeping everything really focused and being really thoughtful about when you're going to scale is really important in terms of growing your business.
Those are, like, not just for growing your business. As you were talking, I was thinking about, like, anytime you wanna try something or pilot something, whether it's a new
Hmm.
business or you see an opportunity, it could be in your warehouse, could be manufacturing, could be in planning. I love that. Like, try it, get scrappy and try it, and then be
Mhm.
thoughtful about the scaling. Yeah.
So true.
So
Yeah.
good nuggets there. Okay, uh, Master Cicerone, I do feel like you should have worn your jacket for this podcast.
Mhm.
Didn't even think of it.
What what's a surprising or maybe a little known fact that you, about it could be about the beer making process, any of those 5 knowledge buckets that you talked about, but something you're like, "I think everybody should know this about beer."
Mm, great question. I think one of the things that comes to mind, I think people may be surprised to learn that yeast actually contributes more to the flavor than the other ingredients. I think hops often get the spotlight for like
Mm,
their bitterness and aroma and where they're from and what kind of hops they are, but I don't know, yeast is kind of the unsung hero. Like it
Mm.
contributes so much to the flavor. Like the esters, the phenols, like
mhm.
other metabolites, and then like thinking about, the fermentation temperature that you're fermenting at can have a big impact on, the same yeast strain. And so that's kind of where the like art meets the science of creating a beer of like, okay, let's pull these like little levers and little tweaks and can make a big impact to a beer and you're not actually changing any of the ingredients.
That's pretty cool.
So
Hmm. I didn't know that, so that is interesting. Okay, Shelly, last question of the day. This went by so fast.
okay.
It's crazy. Okay, so you in your journey, can you tell us a moment or where you stumbled, made a mistake, but ended up being kind of like your greatest teaching moment?
Yes, this is a good question. Um, What comes to mind for me, so there was a period of time where I had some distractions in my personal life. There was just a lot of things going on, and I was managing a lot of projects at the same time. And so just there was a lot on the plate in general. And I think I had a project that I kind of just put on autopilot. I was like, that one's straightforward, it's going, no big deal. And I kind of took my eye off the ball. And what happened is I assumed some things were happening that were not happening, and I learned very late that there were some major issues with this project, and we were coming up on a key milestone date, and I was like, "Oh, man, this is pretty bad." And so fortunately, we were able to pivot and, it caused a fire drill for a number of people across the company. And it, you know, the good news is we got there, but it could have been avoided. And so I think there are a few lessons learned there. Like, one is about building in systems to help note it, like to help identify and flag those things much earlier in the process. So, like, we're always going to be busy. There's always going to be a lot of things, but how can we sort of like fortify our process so that
Mm.
if
Oh, I like
something like
that.
this happens, you're going to catch it, even if you're really crazy and busy. So that was one piece. And I think just how I was managing the project, like, it's great to give your team autonomy, but you also are ultimately responsible for the project. So,
Mm.
like, how do you make sure that you're asking questions and not just assuming that things are all good and in line, and you're like, oh, the team's got it, and they probably do, but let's just make sure we're asking the questions and checking those major boxes so that we don't get surprised when we're way further down the line of like, oh, now this is really difficult to fix.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, one of those situations that you're like, ugh, that doesn't feel great, but you learn and
You
hopefully
know,
become a better leader moving forward. So
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. Fortify your process. I'm going to remember that. Well, Shelley, this has been
yes.
such a pleasure. I know you know Katie, but just getting to meet you and wow, yeah, you should wear your jacket more often, is my opinion. But
Courtney.
up to you. Up to you. But yeah, it's just really been a pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And hopefully, we've inspired some other women to get into brewing. And
Yes.
I think Katie and I, this whole weekend, we've got to interview some great experts in the
Very
field. So
different
it's an
areas. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
thank you very much for sharing with us this beautiful Sunday morning. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. And Courtney, it was great to meet you. So thank you so much.